So good afternoon. I am joined this afternoon by Rhona Matheson, who is the Chief Executive of Starcatchers. Hi, Rhona. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Francesca. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. It's great to have you. So without much further ado, I'll introduce today's conversation, which will be around the implementation of the principles of the UNCRC and looking specifically at the work that Starcatchers does. So to start us off, would you say a few words about the work that you do and why Article 31 of the UNCRC in particular on children's rights to access leisure, play and culture is at the foundation of the work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. So Starcatchers is Scotland's arts and early years organisation. So we specialise in arts and creative experiences for babies, toddlers, young children, those from birth to about 5 years old and their parents and carers. And we deliver a range of activities through our work, which is really rooted in child-centred practice, the idea that the babies are at the heart of everything that we do. So we make professional theatre productions, visual art installation type experiences that we will tour to theatre venues or public spaces, sometimes schools and nurseries or libraries around the country. We also have programmes of community engagement where we can support consistent contact between artists and the same groups of very young children and their parents and carers. Because I'm really fascinated by what can happen when children have that consistent contact with artists. And we also run programmes of training and development, both for artists who are interested in exploring this work, because up until we started sort of over 15 years ago, there was no such thing as theatre for babies in Scotland. There was some provisions of music-based, library-based provision for very young children, but really the development of arts and creative experiences for our youngest children really started when Starcatchers was almost a catalyst and has enabled lots of others to think about young children and their access to arts and creativity across Scotland. So providing training and actually providing inspiration for artists to think about the kind of work they might want to do with that audience is really important. But we also offer training and development for the early learning and childcare workforce, because we're really passionate about enabling as many children as possible to have these rich cultural experiences and have arts and creativity as part of their childhood experiences on a regular basis. And if we can't have an artist in every single childcare setting in the country, if we've got a workforce who really are confident and have a capacity in using their own innate creativity when they're working with children and families, then actually the kinds of experiences that those children might have are really rich. So that's a kind of a snapshot of the kind of work that we do. And from an arts perspective, children's arts organisations often talk about Article 31 of the UNCRC, but our part of it is often referred to as the forgotten. The Article 31 is often referred to as the forgotten article, but we talk about the arts and cultural life aspect of that as being the forgotten part of the forgotten article of the UNCRC. So for us, giving children or fulfilling children's rights to access arts and cultural life is absolutely at the heart of the work. That sense that, as human beings, we all have cultural entitlements, but I don't think we really talk about that very much in Scotland. So in putting this at the heart of our work, we're trying to I suppose open up that conversation, but really enable as many children in Scotland, our youngest children, to have to access and fulfil that right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting as well, because it really points to the fact that sometimes children's policy or children's issues are viewed almost as separate from the rest of societal issues. But of course, as you say, we are all entitled to a cultural life, access to arts and culture. And as you've just said, you know, in Scotland, we don't necessarily think about that too much in the grand scheme of things, let alone for young children. So that's absolutely such a fabulous insight. Thank you. Could you share some practical advice on group practice examples of implementing the principles of the UNCRC with children and families? So are there any kind of highlights that you think our audience would benefit from?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I suppose there's so much conversation at the moment about the UNCRC and the implementation and what that might look like, and inevitably that's having had that sort of rooting in Article 31 since the beginning. More recently, we've been looking at the UNCRC kind of more broadly. So I'm really interested in that understanding that actually the work that we do enable children to access a kind of full range of their rights. It's not just about the Article 31, it's about their rights. That's of Article 13 around self-expression, Article 12 around the voice, and the voice piece is really, really interesting, because I think that article I think is often read very literally, and that it becomes down to if you're sort of doing consultation or participation with children, it's what they tell you verbally, but actually it's far more complex than that. And from birth, babies are telling us what they think and what they need and what they want. But it's about finding ways in which we can tune into their body language, to their expression, to the noises that they're making, and understand how they are expressing themselves and how we respond to their voice in that sense. So that's very much a sort of an approach that we try to take in the work that we do. So in our community engagement projects, there's absolutely no point if the artists that we're working with are dictating the content week after week of the activity that takes place, because we want these spaces to be environments where parents or carers and their wee ones can come and enjoy and participate in arts experiences collectively together. It's that positive shared experience that can support their relationships. It's supporting attachment, and as well as the sort of social emotional development of the infants. But if we're saying we're going to do contemporary dance next week, and that's not something that's interesting to the parents, and let alone, how does a baby know what that is? That doesn't make sense. So what the artists that we work with do is we're constantly making observations of how the babies are interacting with materials, with people, with different types of art forms. So we will introduce things and tune in to what they're responding to, and that feeds the kind of processes that we undertake, so that we are tailoring those group activities specifically to the needs and the interests of those groups. And I just think that's a really important way of approaching it. And I know that lots of other organisations do, take that very kind of observational practice-based approach. But I think as we continue to think about the implications of UNCRC and implementation, and where our youngest children sit within that, because coming back to that point about Article 12, in that sense that we do consultation and you do consultation and participation work with children who can tell you and use language to do that actually you've then got a significant cohort of our children whose voices are not being represented. They're not influencing policy, they're not influencing decision making. So I'm really keen that we can develop some approaches to do that. So we are undertaking a research project at the moment around developing an arts-based methodology for pre and non-verbal children. So it's just very early stages at the moment, but we feel that the role of the arts and the role of the artist can be a real key to unlocking potential in terms of that communication with small children, but also in supporting their adults to really understand, what those children are telling us, and how that can then influence decisions and things that are being made around those children in their lives.
I think that is the perfect segue into my last question, which is moving forward once the UNCRC is fully incorporated into Scots law. What do you think are the key priorities for statutory and third sector organizations to successfully embed and implement a children's rights approach to work? And you've kind of answered this already, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is absolutely about the job of work that's needed across the country, across sectors, about really informing and educating the adults about what is the UNCRC and what does it mean? What does it mean for children, but also what does it mean for us as the adults who are involved in children's lives? There can't be many adults who have no contact with any child or young person in Scotland. And a fundamental role that we have is supporting children to access their rights. And if we don't understand what the convention is and what the possibilities within it are, how are children ever going to access and really fulfill their rights? So I think I know that there's lots of brilliant work that organisations and schools and nurseries are undertaking, but I think there's a much bigger awareness raising kind of campaign or kind of process that needs to take place to really embed that kind of rights-based approach within society. And it is a cultural shift. I think it's very much it can really support a different way of how we think about children in our society. And I think we've got quite a Presbyterian kind of approach. We still have this hangover of that kind of Victorian ideology that children should be seen and not heard. But actually the potential with the UNCRC is to say, actually, our children are really fundamental parts of our society. They are citizens, and we need to embrace them in all aspects of our lives, in all aspects of what's taking place, because they are the ones who have to deal with the impact of the decisions that we make now. But if we can be really embracing them into our thinking and into our decision making and having consideration of that, then I think we're setting ourselves up in a much stronger position than just, obviously the UNCRC is ratified at the moment, but actually the implementation for me is a real catalyst for positive change.
That is a perfect way to end our interview. And just on a final note, perhaps if you can tell our audience where they can find out more about Starcatchers, or is there anything in particular you'd like to say about the work you're doing before we finish?
Sure. So there's lots of information about Starcatchers on our website, which is starcatchers.org.uk. We also have Facebook page and Twitter and Instagram, and there's lots of brilliant content that is shared. There's amazing free resources for parents and early years practitioners on the website as well, that are sort of free or low cost creative activities to do with little ones.
Thank you so much, Rhona, for your time. It's been wonderful to speak, and good luck with everything.
Thanks very much.